A state of control.
This is A State of Control, your monthly look at the control and automation segment of the AV industry. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host, tanned, rested, and ready. Recovered from Vegas, and I guess technically recovered from the 4th of July weekend here in the good old United States. Those of you outside of the 50 states, it was just on the weekend. So, with us, as always, the host and the producer extraordinary, Mr. Steve Greenblatt, Chief Everything at Control Concepts. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Glad we can get going really closely after InfoComm, and we had a great opportunity to get everybody together there, and looking forward to an exciting episode.
Yeah, we had some good times. Steve, actually, if you've not checked out our YouTube channel, you will see the beautiful face of Mr. Greenblatt there, touring a couple different booths at InfoComm. So check that out. You did DP and RP visuals and a couple others. So very good job with that. So
thank you. It was great.
Also with us, as always, Uncle Richie, Rich Fregosa from FregosaDesign.com. Way out west. How are you, sir?
Merry greetings.
I'm good. Jeez Louise. You know what? Good night. How are you? How was
I'm doing. 4th was fantastic. It was the second annual Bacon Fest of America that I made sure that. It is a food festival that is purely based on bacon.
Yeah,
so it was
Wow.
nothing wrong with that. I was bringing my boy up right. He walked away at the end of the day and he said, "Dad, was this a good day at Bacon Fest?" I said, "Son, it was a great day at Bacon Fest."
A bad day at Bacon Fest is a good day anyplace else.
Exactly. So,
all right.
good times.
A couple of newbies, so you two be nice to them. First up, we have Eric Cantrell from Media Lawn Show Control. How are you, sir?
Hi, I'm doing great.
We were kind of not making fun, but making fun of ourselves. It's Media Lawn because when you first look at Media Lawn, I wanted to say Medallion. So Media Lawn, MediaLawn.com.
Yeah, we get that a lot.
And also, I'm sure. Also with us is Daniel, and I didn't ask you before, so I'm apologizing here live. Renne?
Yep, that's correct.
There we go. From High Resolution Systems. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
Good. Glad to have you both. Here's an interesting the topic this month, I guess, is quote unquote alternative control solutions, and I hesitate to say alternative, right? Because let's be honest here, there's two big boys or girls, two big people, two big companies in the world of control and automation in the AV industry. You have Crestron and you have AMX. Extron is kind of coming into their own with their. They do have their own independent programmer path now. I believe Steve is headed down that way. I'm still figuring it out for myself with the company that I work for, which is called Innovad. And so let's focus on those two for just 2 seconds, right? Those are the two main ones when people think about home automation in general, right? But there are others, right? You've got Control 4, and you have Command Fusion, and you've got these other ones that are making very good systems, and sometimes may very well be as good or maybe even better, as sacrilegious as that may be to say, as a Crestron programmer and an AMX programmer, to say that there may be some solutions that are better than the two big ones in certain situations. So that's what this month is about, right? This month is all about, you know what, let's take a look at the big two. Yes, good, groovy, they're over there, right? They're going to be over in the corner. And for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to talk about systems other than them, right? So Steve, the first question, and we'll kick it off with you on here. When you're assessing a system, right? Whether you or Rich or myself, we get a scope of work and we say, okay, here's what we want you to do. Here's the systems we want you to control, and this is the owner provided material, and this is the stuff that you guys, or this is the stuff that the contractor is going to provide, and you, Mr. Programmer, this is what we want you to control. How do you make that decision, and whether it's you or it's the integrator that says, okay, this is the control system you need to go with, and if it's not always, the big two, how then do we justify, or do we, make the pros and cons list, more favorable on the pro side for these alternative systems?
Sure. Well, I guess starting off to answer the question, and unfortunately, in the position that we're in, we really don't have much say many times. A lot of times we have to go along with what's currently the install base, but I always try to tell people when they ask me to compare the two, it really comes down to what is it that you're most comfortable with? What do you do the most, and what do you?
Or the integrator? The integrator,
It has to be the integrator, I guess, at that point. And sometimes some clients are doing more of their own support and installation. So I guess maybe there is some overlap to consider there too. But that would be the first way that I would answer that. And I do have many politically correct answers in those situations.
Oh, don't.
But beyond that, of course, you need to look at reliability, and you need to look at support, and of course budget comes into play, and always when it comes down to it, though, it's application is really where you have to start with. What is the solution that is a good fit for what you're trying to do? And we'll get into maybe some of the specifics of different platforms out there, but some may be a better solution for residential, some may be a better solution for commercial, some may be a better solution for live staging or live performance, some may be a better solution for a mobile front end. So it really does come down to application, but I think that what's most important to us, I think, as programmers, as installers, as designers, is making sure that we have a good partner, and that partner is going to be there to back us, to support us, to work together, and also you want to be looking at a platform that has the scalability and expandability, because you don't want to get into a situation where you are trying to evolve a particular installation or system, and you run out of room, you hit boundaries, and so forth. So I think those are the main things to really consider.
Okay. Uncle Richard, real quick, we're going to get to you on this, but Steve made a point. Eric, we'll start with you on this, because you guys are both manufacturers of alternative control systems. How do you support us as the programmers or even the integrators? Whether it's a rep or whether it's your technical support or what have you, how do you make sure that as a manufacturer, as the guys that are and gals who are making this product and encouraging us to use it, how do you make sure that we're supported in the field?
Well, the first thing we do is we find out from you what it is you're trying to do. Just like Steve said, functionality is the key. It's the beginning, it's the end of it. That's actually how you determine whether or not you've done your job as a programmer, is whether what you set out to do is actually accomplished with the touch screens or the mobile interface that you've designed for them. So we always start with a functional analysis of the system, and then from there we can work through the various iterations of which hardware makes sense. Does it make sense to go virtual? Does it make sense to split this into a device server and a logic server and a GUI server? So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about architecting a system, but from a support standpoint, we need to know what's the story from the beginning. Are you going to walk in, the lights go down, the video plays, seats are going to rumble, and then the doors are going to open at the end? Or are you going to walk into a boardroom and the room needs to be ready for you based on the scheduling information coming from Microsoft Exchange? So totally different things, but you tell the story about how the space will be used from the perspective of the user, the technical people, the administrators, all of that, and you have to consider about the system as a whole. And then you know where to go from there.
Okay, no, that's a good valid point. All right, Uncle Richie, take me through assessing and going down the checklist of, okay, you want to do this, this, and this, and this. You know what? This might be a good place for MediaLine or HRS or Command Fusion. How do you make those decisions?
I mean, again, honestly, the first part is like, look, what line can you get? I mean, we talk about kind of I mean, let's be perfectly honest. It's you know, I mean, we talk about, you know, the big 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever you want to call them. You know, a larger company or a more established company has access to more lines just because they've been around longer, and depends on the market and the segment and anything else. You know, there might be a market that's just saturated, and they're just not going to take on any more dealers. So at that point, you know, brother's still got to eat. You know.
Well, yes.
And so at that point, really, it's a matter of finding out, you know, who can you work with, what are the lines that you can pick up, what skill set do you have in order to be able to deploy it. First, you know, are you going to handle it internally? Are you going to be handling it with your own programmers? Or are you going to be going to a third-party programmer like myself or Steve or you or anybody else? So really, the first part really becomes a matter of, okay, what position is your company in to be able to support X lines? Okay. Once you've established that, then it becomes a matter of like we were just saying, Eric was saying a little bit earlier, is okay, well, what's the story? What's the story that you're going to tell at this point? You know, are you going to be just controlling a room and a home theater? Are you going to be controlling whole house systems? Are you gonna? What about lights? What are your interface devices at this point? And then once you figure out mapping backwards, you know, how do you see this working? Then you go into the short list of, okay, these are the devices or these are the manufacturers who can fit that. Then you go into the next part, which is, okay, let's assess your budget. Let's go ahead and assess where you are in the grand scheme of things. You know, right now, you know, home automation and just automation in general is becoming more visible, and it's becoming part of the fabric of everyday life that people are starting to see it. You know, it's the whole promise of the Jetsons, you know, is we're actually starting to see it happen in our lifetime. You know, I mean, when you can manufacture your own food at this point with, you know, with a 3D printing system coming around the corner, that's kind of cool stuff. So people are starting to see this, but what they aren't necessarily crazy about is the thought of the cost of automation right now. And that's where we are in a very weird limbo state. You know, you have a phone company or a cable company or a security company promising that it'll do everything you want for $7.99 a month, and we find out that, well, maybe not. And now we actually need equipment that allows you to provide the interface and work your way through. And so that's when companies, you know, you do find you might start out with a budget solution, which is kind of here's your starter. Let's get you used to automation in general. And this may not fit all your needs, but it'll fit some needs that you have right now. And as you're working up, and that's where we've seen some success with some of the smaller integrators, which is your company structure isn't in place yet to just bite off, you know, that big piece. I know you see all the magazines, and I know you read the articles, and you watch the podcast, and you're like, I can do that. You're not ready yet, you know, and so part of it allows us to get them playing within themselves, which is let's turn something on and off. Let's turn the volume up and down. And here are X boxes that we can use. Put them in for a nominal fee, you know, or a budget, or keeping it all within scale where, you know, I mean, if you're doing a sub $20,000 room, you know, and that's everything, they're going to have a hard time seeing some steep programming fees. So you have to kind of fall within initially where the pain points are, and so with a smaller system or a third-party system, is it nearly as fully featured? Do they have the ecosystem? No, but they will likely get the job done. Give them the ability to grow with it, and then after time passes, they either stick with the line and they become just more adept at it and can expand it, or they move into some of the larger, bigger lines as they move down the line. So again, it's you know, it's kind of let's see. It's kind of like my first automation system at that.
And that's exactly what I was thinking.
You know, I mean, it's the Fisher Price. I mean, I don't want to knock these other companies. Yeah, I don't want to knock these other companies because they do fantastic work. But I mean, that's what you're doing. You're establishing some training wheels at a lower price point to get them used to the process.
But don't you run the risk then of making the overall, like their end product, their end system, more expensive because you're okay? So here's your base model, unless you're building on the base, right? And if you're building on the base, I get that, but it's also possible, not for every system, obviously, or every home, but hey, here's system A. This one over here is you're going to end up paying $20,000 for the system, but this one here is only $100, and we'll build on that one. So.
Well, again, it's context. I mean, you can afford to be optimistic at times, which is, and it's full disclosure. It's like, look, this is not going to do everything. I am emphatically stating you cannot go from here to there. But for the next year, 2 years, whatever you feel that life cycle of the system is, this will do exactly what you want right now. It's we've always used the analogy of you can buy an economy car and throw all the aftermarket stuff on it, right? Or you can just buy the performance car. Well, sometimes you can't buy the performance car right off the bat, and so and it's interesting. I spoke to a young integrator a couple of months ago, and he's like, "Look, man, that's great that you guys are doing all of this stuff. But there's lots of us guys that are in different parts of the country that, maybe we're in the middle of the Midwest or these areas. It's like they're just not going to go for it, flat out. They're just not going to go for it. And so we still have to find ways to continue to build our businesses. And I mean, and that one stuck with me at that point, which is, it's not everybody's going to do these huge systems, and so you don't always have to plan for the future if you don't know what the future is. Sometimes you just got to stay with the now. The California vibe. Just be with the now, man. Just be with the now.
Yeah, and I think that regardless of the control system manufacturer, I think that project scope comes into play. I mean, you really don't want to bite off more than you can chew.
Well, and that, real quick question for you guys. I was actually going to go to you, Daniel. When it comes to, Rich makes the point that, go with what they can use, go with what they can afford, go with what they're comfortable with. That being said, as you're assessing, and I say you're, integrators and folks like Rich and Steve and myself, and we talk to guys like you and Eric and say, you know what, this is kind of what we want to do. How is there a point where brand X or brand Y or brand A or B or C is more technically advanced than Command Fusion or you guys or a Medialon? Or are you all talking ones and zeros, right? At the end of the day, we're all talking ones and zeros. We're all talking, relay closures and stuff like that. And so then it really comes down to what the front end, the pretty front end is. Are you guys all pretty much, technically the same on the back end?
I think HRS and ourselves are pretty similar. Oh, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I would say we're fairly similar. In the end, it is all about sending bytes over the wire and talking to different APIs of different pieces of hardware. I think, I'm not sure for Medialon. I think Medialon, from what I've seen, is definitely more show control. At least I know you guys used to be that. I'm not sure where you guys have changed throughout the last couple of years. I think you guys have come out with a few advanced GUI products, if I'm not mistaken. Correct, Eric?
Yeah, that's right. We're
so I'm sure there's probably some similarities there.
All right, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, we're expanding a little bit more into the centralized control of lots of similar type rooms. So if you've got 6 dozen hotel rooms in a boutique hotel, or you've got a bunch of meeting rooms in a corporate building or a college campus, that you have a lot of similar control over these different rooms, being able to roll that out in a pretty easy and fast way. That's kind of a direction that we're heading with some of the advances in our technology. But we're not losing sight of our bread and butter market, which is the show control.
Well, and that's one of the things. We have a good friend. But AVNation has a good friend by the name of John Huntington, who's written a couple of different books. Actually, I've got one of his books back here about show control, show networks and control systems. Right here. I think he may even sign this one for me. But this is John. Yeah, he works in New York. He teaches in New York and shows folks how to do stuff like that. Actually, if you're ever in New York in around the fall time, They do a phenomenal. I've never seen it in person, but I've seen blog posts, and actually George Tucker has been through it. They do a really cool haunted house, and it's all done by Show Control, and it's really cool. Some of the back end stuff that they do. Mr. Greenblatt. Okay, so we're all talking ones and zeros. We're all talking bytes. We're all talking pretty much the same thing. Are there certain applications or certain markets or certain instances that lend themselves more to Medialon, or lend themselves more to AMX, or lend themselves more to HRS, or what have you? Or is it pretty much like Rich said, what can you get, right? Is what lines do you cover? What lines can you get? Or are there specific situations where one company really does kind of outshine the rest?
It certainly in very niche type of projects, there are better fits. There are certain platforms that are made for certain solutions, and whether it's that they have their ease of programming, or whether it's their user interface offerings. Whether for residential, it needs to be a little bit of a softer, more homey, more personalized feeling, whereas commercial can be more generic or industrial. So there are certainly some that are better fits than others. One thing that I was thinking of throughout the conversation is that I think that the idea of programming versus configuring versus no programming necessary type of an approach, I think that those are certainly differentiators and also have their right fit. The idea that you don't have to have somebody who is necessarily certified or technically trained, or but can install and get a system up and running, has a lot of benefit for the right application. Whereas the need to have somebody who is very technically astute and can make the system jump through hoops is also a good fit for another type of situation or client, let's say. I mean, and I think that those are things that really need to be mapped out up front. What are the boundaries? What can and can't we do? And what are the expectations? And of course, that comes into play when you're talking about numbers and making choices and so forth.
Daniel and Eric, real quickly, neither of you have systems that don't require any programming, correct? Because we don't like those. Just so you know. Because you're talking to 3 different independent programmers here, so we don't like those. So. No, it's actually a good question. Do either of you have ones that out of the box, you can just plug and play?
We don't. The system is an integrated development environment, so what you're getting is basically something that does nothing. It's like Excel. You have to make it you have to put input in order to get useful output. So that's what we're delivering. We're delivering hardware, we're delivering software, but essentially it's just an environment in which you can create what it is you want. I know that like Crestron has a configurable system where you just tell it what the devices are, and it sort of self-populates those user interfaces. That's not something that we're doing, but who knows what tomorrow might be.
Daniel, do yours are yours pretty much just like Eric was saying, where you guys are providing the hardware and kind of the software, and guys like us are the ones who are making it do the ins and outs?
Yeah, exactly. We don't really provide sort of templates that you would just pre-populate. We're starting to build a few canned solutions just out of our own few needs we've seen in the market. But it's so hard to just put a canned solution in. I mean, it seems like every install is unique, and that's why we don't have those templates at this point. As far as programming goes, it's probably 98% configuration, and the only 2% of coding would be if you had to do two-way response with like a driver that we didn't have in the system, if you needed to do two-way response. And there's a couple other options you can do JavaScript programming for. So.
Oh, very cool. Just for the record, I'm a big fan of two-way programming, and actually next week. Is it next week, Steve? we're
week from Wednesday.
Battle royaling. We'll talk about this in a couple of minutes. But Steve and I are doing a debate with Commercial Integrator. That's actually one of the topics is feedback.
Nice.
Because here's the thing. I'm going to digress for 30 seconds here. I have had multiple instances where client after client after client has insisted, and whether it is the homeowners or it is the IT professional who wants to see what the volume level is. Feedback is essential, and it's essential. it just so yeah, that's one of the topics that we're going to cover is whether or not how much feedback how much feedback is too much type.
Right.
Well, and then you can get into remote monitoring once you get into feedback.
Yeah.
So you could have a university with 300 video projectors, and in order to place bulk lamp orders to save money, you need to know without sending somebody around with a remote control to each room and wasting their time. So being able to get that all into a dashboard type interface is really useful just for operations.
Yeah, it is. So we'll put a link up on where you can go sign up for that webinar. I think this is the first webinar I've done. You've done a couple with them, haven't you, Steve?
I think it'll be my second. We did one on source code, but they're both kind of connected with some AVNation shows.
Yeah, so that was actually a good one too. We talked about who quote unquote owns the code. So we're not going to get into it here. It's a much longer discussion. So,
but please see a previous episode.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's just a separate show on this week's episode of Who Owns the Code.
Now we talk to a lawyer. Now we talk to the Supreme Court. Who,
The telenovela version, El Source Code.
We should have done a World Cup version of this show. I've actually gotten into the World Cup this year. I don't know why. Anyhow. All right. Real quickly. We all of our podcasts are brought to you by the fine folks at Middle Atlantic Products. Who we had a great time with. Middle Atlantic really has kind of stepped up in the last 6 months with us. It's our very first sponsor. It's our very first company. We have a really good relationship with the folks over there, with Becky Villarreal and everybody there. Went by their booth. Check out the clip on YouTube if you would. It's a really great. My part sucks, but the rest of it is a really good booth interview. They've got some really great new products. They've got a new display mount that will let you raise it up and down. They've got one that's built for VTC. All sorts of stuff. If you go by their website, which is also brand new, middleatlantic.com, you will see training videos, and you can chat to someone from 8 Eastern in the morning to 8 Eastern at night. That's for folks like Rich, who are 5 hours behind everybody else. So you can chat even at the end of the day. So middleatlantic.com, Middle Atlantic, what great systems are built on. So thanks so much for them. All right, guys. Real quickly, we're talking about programming. We're talking about the alternative systems, and I hesitate even saying that. Steve and I we'll talk every couple of weeks about what our next episode is, and this is one that I've kind of wanted to do for a while, simply because I love them. I program them. This is the way I make my money, right? I'm not mincing any words here. Crestron and AMX is how I get a paycheck, because I program for them. However, as much as I love them and they're really great people there are other people out there, right? I mean, it's like you've got a couple buddies, you're hanging out having a beer, but there are other friends that you hang out with, and they're fine too. They're really great, and so that's when Steve and I started talking about this alternative system. I kind of hesitated using that word because it's almost like, yeah, they're over there, they're there too, but no, these are really great systems. Eric, we'll start with you, and then Daniel, we'll kick it over to you, and then I want to get your and Steve and Rich's take on this. When it comes to marketing yourself or getting into an integrator who maybe either can't get one of Crestron or AMX, they don't sell enough, or what have you, or they simply, they are big time, AMX or Crestron dealers. Eric, how do you start that conversation? Hi, my name is Eric. I'm with MediaLawn. This is our product, and this is what it does, and this is why maybe you should use us. either instead of, or as a companion to your Crestron or your AMX system?
Sure. We're typically talking to the technical people, so the people who are they have their fingers in the code, and they're the ones that are looking at how easy this will be to implement, or how easy it will be to sell to their customers. So I usually start off with a demonstration of the programming environment, just showing how easy it is to build a user interface that turns on and off a projector and shows the lamp hours. Or then we'll go and progress that into, this is how you would build a show where you have a bunch of events that are time critical alongside one another. And then we'll take that and we'll introduce the concept of logic. So now we have time-based stuff that you can also make decisions on based on inputs into the system. So you have this complex two-way communication with your devices, but also your show has to take inputs from, I have an enable hit, so that means that yes, I'm going to go ahead and fire that light cue, or that enable's not hit, so I want to misdirect the audience and fire a different light cue that's showing a different area of the stage. So magic shows are a great example of that. You don't want to light up the back of the box if the back of the box is still open. So, so we'll work through a few scenarios of that, and it kind of helps to illustrate to the technical people, at least, the ease of programming. And by the end of a half an hour, we've done 3 or 4 different examples that are fully functional examples. When was the last time you did in half an hour 4 different projects complete with user interfaces?
Never.
So there you go. So you do have the ability to quickly put together a rather robust system in a short amount of time, but you're still delivering full functionality. So we have to have this conversation about, okay, so you're shortening the amount of time that the programmer has to do things, but you're still delivering the same amount of functionality, so you need to price on functionality your work, not based on how many hours it takes to write drivers for projectors.
Yeah.
And it changes the conversation a little bit.
It does, and it's a conversation actually that Steve and I had with Matt Slack about programming and programming time, which I need to get Matt back on, Steve, because having him a part of that conversation would be really interesting. All right, Daniel,
Sure.
I'm a new a prospective client or prospective integrator. How do you convince me to start using your system as opposed to maybe one of the big 2 or 3, or maybe as an alternative to Command Fusion or something like that?
Yeah, usually how I start, and even our sales guys will start out with this, is we're going to probably qualify your company first to see, okay, do you have programmers on staff? Do you have people who have written code before? Or are you just like a company that is looking to get into the control business and may not know where to start? And with that said, I'll go into just the basics. I won't even go into logic or variables or two-way response at that point. At that point, I might just say, all right, this is how you turn a projector on. This is how you turn it off. One-way communication. So it really depends on the customer that I'm targeting. I'm going to have to qualify them first before I go into how I'm going to sell them on our technology. If it was, let's say, someone who had maybe 2 or 3 programmers on staff, I'd probably go into our Linux SDK and show them how our JavaScript can do two-way communication.
Okay.
So,
Rich, when you're talking from a programmer's standpoint, and we're dealing with the integrator, and maybe they're coming to you, right? They're saying, Rich, we've got this job, this program, this project, and either you're dealing with the integrator who, again, doesn't have access to AMX or Crestron, or simply is choosing not to use that. How do you convince them that this or that program or that this or that I guess the best way to put it, this or that product line is the best way to go? I mean, does it go back to what the question is, what do you want to do, or but you're dealing with an integrator who has a bottom line just like you do. So how do you talk them through assessing for their needs, these other alternative control systems?
Math.
Okay.
Math. It's there's a certain point where you not only are dealing with the technology, but you're also going to be looking at the relationship and the partnership. Perfect example is that, when you're dealing with a company who's providing X amount of products, are they basically saying, here's your products, yeah, we've got one tech support guy, but he's kind of around on Wednesdays between 12 and 12:15. And some companies are, kind of the mad scientists in the background. Other companies a little bit more fully fledged, probably paying a little bit more of a premium, but you may have a full tech support team to be able to dial into. You may have a programming forum to work with. It becomes a matter of who are you comfortable with, who do you feel that you're going to build a relationship with, and more importantly, what are the support structures in place? If it's a matter of saying, hey, look, we need to go as stripped down as we can go. Look, we're just turning on a projector, we're doing X, Y, or Z. Yeah, okay, great. There's this little device that everybody can basically get from Amazon, but really you need somebody in the background to be able to actually make it work.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. That fits within the schedule, or fits within the budget and what the scope of work may be in, and you push it out. The other one may be a little bit more feature rich. Again, what's your interface? Are you using a handheld remote? Are you using a tablet? Are you using a mobile device? I mean, everything, again, to me, it's like I kind of feel like I'm the guy banging my shoe on the table. It's mobile, every single time. When it comes back to the interface, what are they talking about? Mobile, 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 whether it's a tablet or whether it's a phone. You don't see many people saying, hell yeah, I want my brand new 40-button remote to be able to do all of that. You don't see it anymore. They're looking for softer interfaces that are a little bit more flexible. And so that becomes a matter of, okay, what's going to work within the Android environment? Are you looking at an iOS environment? It was, Daniel was saying something. He's like, yeah, we're going to open up the Linux kernel for them to look at. It's like, I can tell you that there's probably 90% of the dealers, their eyes just glazed over as soon as that happened. You get the what?
First of all, the first question is, what is Linux? Secondly, what is a kernel?
What is the kernel? I thought it made popcorn.
No, we don't expose any of the Linux kernel or even the shell to our end users. It's simply built on a web front-end basis, so you can change anything you need to in the system all through the web page, essentially. Even the JavaScript code, it's just JavaScript, just like you would write for a standard web page. I mean, I've got an intern, he's in his second year in college, and he built an entire 500 lines of code device driver in like 4 hours. I mean, that's how quick he was able to do it. So it's very easy to use, and we really focus on the mobile platforms. We think that is definitely the future, and we've always been focused on it because we just don't have the hardware resources like Crestron and AMX that we're not buying thousands and thousands of units from China for hardware.
Well, and again, that brings up a point. It's when the phrase "it's just JavaScript," you're going to require some form of third party, most likely.
Sure.
You're going to be dealing with, at that point, you start stepping away from the configuration side, and this is what I was talking about the partnerships. There becomes that line or that chasm that you jump over between configuration and software development. And that's really where you start moving into true software development at that point. I know that Eric was talking about, they have an IDE. Again, it's a sandbox. It becomes a matter of it is only as good as the input, which is going to be the person who's sitting tapping away at a keyboard to determine what the output is. So that is where our industry is changing again, and I'm going to keep going back to it. I keep talking about more and more that it's one of the famous lines at this point now is software's eating the world. The integration market itself, the AV market itself is it's a slow evolution until there is going to be that tidal shift that occurs. It's not going to be small. It will just be one of these days. These integrators are going to look up and go, what just happened to me? And part of it is hopefully these companies are bridging the gap, which is saying, look, you don't have the resources to have a software developer in-house. Yeah, you can't do JavaScript yourself, but you know what? We do have some people here. We will work in partnership with you to develop it, and it's part of our suite. So that is kind of a segment unto itself when you're using some of these other alternative control systems at that point. They're saying, look, we're not this behemoth. It's not, you're going to buy what we have or else you're SOL, or you have to go through 15 different certification classes and the process before we even let you get this line. Again, going back to brother's got to eat.
Rich, it's funny that you say that because really there was a point in time where everybody was threatening that we were going to be losing our jobs because they weren't going to need programming anymore, and now the conversation is totally shifting to, hey, you got to start looking at this as software development. It's not programming. Yes. And I start to look at it as you have your front of the house and back of the house people. Somebody's got to be writing the drivers in the libraries, which is the critical part, and then the other people have to be putting it all together. And but it really is a big shift in the way we look at things, and I think it's very exciting for programmers to realize now that the complexity is increasing, and it's providing more opportunities for us to do more and achieve more and tap into areas that we weren't previously able to use, or skill sets that we weren't able to use.
Well, and I think just for that reason is that the segment itself is kind of expanding laterally. There are more and more niche. I think that more and more niche products are going to get developed, simply for the fact that you've got a bright guy who'll just throw up a Kickstarter, and we there's all of these changes that are happening in the tech industry that in the AV world we for whatever reason we've got this really weird inferiority complex in the AV industry about we're not part of tech, we can't embrace tech, we're AV, we're still push carts and slide projectors is some of how these companies still view themselves as, and the change that is occurring is going to be with some new mavericks coming through. I really feel it, is that they're going to be people who will be promoting, Daniel's company and Eric's company, and there's always going to be a market for the big guys. The 800-pound gorilla is always going to be there, okay? Because it's just stability and pedigree and blah 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 blah, and the fact that maybe they've just had it for 20 years. It's kind of like my my granddaddy's Cadillac. It's like granddad had a Cadillac, dad had a Cadillac, I got a Cadillac. But the new market that's changing, with younger executives coming in, with younger homeowners coming in, with a brand new generation that is being weaned on the mobile device and the app, and they're just processing things differently than we are. They're going to be much more open to a niche product that does X and another niche product that does Y, as opposed to the standard way we're doing it. Problem for the integrators, I think, is just what Steve and I were talking about, which was, before it was like, oh, we don't need programmers anymore. It's going to auto-configure itself. It's auto-magic. And we're seeing that title shift occur, which is, no, in fact, we need to work more in partnership together, because you don't necessarily come at this with a computer science degree. You don't have app development skills. You no longer have the tools that could potentially make or break your business. So you got a choice. You can either try to bring it in-house, which if you don't know what you're hiring in the first place, that's going to make it difficult, or you grow out the business as a service industry. And that's really what we're doing is, it's the evolution of what I felt that this industry is moving towards, and I'm seeing more and more glimpses of it. Is in the tech industry, there's software as a service, that SaaS, that is a huge term in the tech industry. It's why Sun Microsystems is no longer around. Cray Supercomputer is no longer around. Why? Because they're harnessing software tools that can leverage smaller hardware investments and can scale differently. our industry is moving towards that, and you're seeing that the integrators that are embracing it are seeing the success with it. The ones who are saying, I'm still hanging plasmas and speakers, and they're withering away, and then that is when that tidal shift will occur at that point.
Well, the thing is that hardware is a cheap commodity nowadays. I mean, what's the difference if we're using, computer X to computer Y? I mean, it's all based on the software. The days of embedded computing for these pieces of hardware are just, like Crestron. Everyone's saying like the hardware is not that big of a deal. I mean, Medialon's got a great box. So does HRS Control. I mean, all that matters is who's programming it and how it's being done with software.
Well, that and sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that the processors that are used in the AMX and Crestron boxes are far lower in the amount of processing that they can do than a modern computer. And so that's where HRS and Medialon are taking advantage of this commoditization and being able to deliver a brand new system with all the bells and whistles just by taking a processor off the shelf and smacking it in a computer, installing the software.
Yeah. Real quickly, we're almost out of time here, guys, and I want to get all four of your takes on this. And Stephen and Rich, you'll go first because you're the programmer parts, and we'll get the manufacturer, the guys in a second. How do you maintain, to Rich's point, how do you maintain or train or hire? How do you get this talent? Because you're right, the software is becoming more and more important. I have a client now, a couple clients actually, that have software developers. They're not programmers, but they're software developers who work in an integration company. That's what they do, right? They're trying to figure out the command structures and stuff like that to make sure that they can create apps that or programs that tie into these different devices, whether it's a projector or a Blu-ray player or what have you. So Steve, how do you get this talent, and then how do you train it and keep it?
It sounds like a continuation from last episode.
It does.
But it's that age-old question, honestly, and it's really hard because you do have to maintain a real diverse skill set, and there's so much to learn in different areas. But if you start to break things down into more tasks rather than looking at a full project, I think that you can find that you can bring on the right person for a specific part of a project, or create specialties, and then hopefully those people can start to get cross-trained and learn other things. But you could start by bringing them in based on what they're good at, what their strengths are, assuming that matches what your need is, and then you can teach them what they need to learn that's beyond that. But what it really comes down to is understanding our customers' needs and understanding systems and really being able to live in the AV environment. And if you don't get that part, it doesn't matter how good of a programmer you are. So that's where I would start. One other point that I was going to make too is just in terms of being able to get involved in other platforms as a programmer or as a programming company, we always look at where is the demand and what are the opportunities and so forth. I mean, I think it's very exciting, and I think it's very healthy to expand our services line, but we also have to make sure that we're putting our time to good use and try to figure out how we can either leverage our knowledge or find a nice niche or demand for other systems.
Absolutely, Mr. Fregosa, how do you wrangle these talented young'uns into the AV industry, or train the ones you have?
I mean, it's somebody who's going to come into this industry is going to come into it because they love it. They're not going to have the next IPO by coming into this industry, more likely than not. So you're looking for somebody who's going to have a passion. And again, it's the continuation of the education episode that we did a while back. It is a dilemma that we face in this industry. Is how do we target them? How do we get them excited? Because everybody, whenever I tell anybody, who's under 25 years old what it is I do, they're like, that's cool, because it is. The difference now is that the kids that are coming out and just coming out of high school are going, oh, that's kind of like what this little app that I put together for my iPhone. And that's really it. Is that, you know, who and are we going to be targeting? Is that these are the kids that you're seeing pushing up stuff on that are at makers fairs, you know, that are in bot competitions, that are in you know, throwing up little Kickstarters or trying to figure out, or, you know, look at what is it, IFTT, if this then that, you know, you know, look at their story. You know, I mean, these are you know, kind of these little spores that are popping up out of the ground all over the place, and you know, part of it is taking the people that you have and investing in them and helping them evolve into the next phase of what the company is. I mean, you know, what's the best possible way? Train the people you got. You know, work with the people you got. Give them room to grow, because they've already shown the loyalty by staying with you. Yeah. So as a business owner or as a partner, part of, I think, your professional and I think your moral obligation is to help them better themselves as well, to continue to expose them to it. I didn't start out as a programmer. You know, it was the furthest thing from my mind. I mean, I had always tinkered with programming since I had my first, you know, Atari 5200, you know, with a, you know, an 8K RAM cartridge. But that was not my calling, I thought, and wound up in this. And I've heard lots of stories like that, which is I went down this road and I found myself here. The only way you find yourself in that road is if somebody intercedes and says, here are the paths you can take. Yeah. And so rather than constantly reaching out and saying, who can we bring in? And look at what you got first, you know, either yourself, and if you feel you can't do it, then who are your key people? And you build, and that's where you build the strength of a company from, is from within, because they will appreciate it, I think.
That's good. I'm a little bit younger than Rich. My first computer was an Apple IIe. Daniel, from the manufacturer's standpoint, whether you're trying to grab people for HRS or for your integrators and helping them, you know, develop talent, how do you what do you tell them?
Yeah, I would say both on, even from my perspective, it's all about marketing to these young 21 to 25, maybe a little bit older as well. Marketing like the different sweet technologies you work with. I mean, oh, you know, you're going to be developing mobile apps. You're going to be developing tablet apps. What else? You're going to be using languages that are, you know, they're not proprietary. You can actually Google and get the information that you want on something like JavaScript or even C#. I know some manufacturers are going that route as well. So, I think that, I mean, if it was me, if I was going to work somewhere, would I want to use some language I've never heard of, and I can't even Google how to actually, you know, get an answer on Stack Overflow or GitHub? I mean, that's the type of world that all the young kids are in, is the GitHub and the Stack Overflow world. So you kind of got to play nice with those worlds.
Yeah, those are good tools, by the way, if you've ever done them. So, all right, Eric. Last but not least, how do you, either for Medialon or for your integrators, how do you counsel them to get more talent?
Well, it starts with having a basic understanding of programming flow. What an if-then structure is like, what a while loop is like, and once you've got a good foundation of that, then you can start with simple architectures, and then once you've got a basis of that, then you can build these bigger architectures and multiple servers talking to each other, and the data flows like this and that and comes back and goes around and comes out a different way altogether. Once you have a good understanding of data flow as opposed to signal flow is going to be handled by the guys who are pulling the cables and hooking the things up. The programmers need to understand in the same way the way data moves through the systems, the way that the signals move down the wires. It helps if they know how a signal moves down the wires also, because they can help with the troubleshooting. But the data flow within a project file or programming project is really key. And so having that understanding, and you can train somebody who understands signal flow to understand data flow. It's the same thing. It's just doing it sort of virtually instead of with a little electrical impulse that you can measure with a voltage meter or an oscilloscope. So from my standpoint, it's understanding signal flow, data flow, and then being able to apply that to do really cool things like a concert tour or a theme park attraction. And that's where the people get excited about what it is that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's when it comes down to, you know, getting them while they're younger and they think it's cool, right? I mean, I'm 40 years old. I still think that, you know, running shows and controlling stuff is cool. So
I also think too that I've had some conversations with some other integrators that have like traveled the world and done various really complex installs. And if traveling is your thing, I think the AV industry is really great for that. You know, there's all sorts of installs you can do all over the country and the world, for that matter.
just be careful because, you know, it may end up in 2 or 3 or 4 marriages. So.
Yeah, that's why you get them while they're young.
Well, yes, that's true. A buddy of ours, actually, Dawn Mead's husband, got sent off to Kuwait for a couple of weeks not too long ago, so we were joking about that. All right, guys, thank you so much. This has been another episode of A State of Control brought to you by Middle Atlantic Products. Daniel Renne from High Resolution System, HRS, has been with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
How can people find out more about you or HRS?
Oh, yeah, just go to our website at hrscontrol.com.
Okay, very good. Also with us has been Eric Cantrell from Medialon, Medialon Show Control. How can people find out more about you or Medialon?
You can look us up on Google+. We have a tech community. We've also got our website, Medialon.com, and Twitter, Facebook, all the regular social media stuff.
Okay, very good. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast and not watching, his Twitter handle is at Eric J. Cantrell, right?
Yes.
Eric J. Cantrell, so don't forget that. Uncle Richie, thank you, sir.
Thanks. I guess I waxed rhapsodically about the state of the industry.
It was awesome. If people don't know, how the heck to find you or follow you? Or
you can find me on the interwebs on Twitter at Fregosa. You can find me on my soon-to-be redeveloped website, fregosadesign.com. As well as you can spot me on CE Pro, coming up at CEDIA this year, as well as one of the CEDIA ambassadors, one of the social media ambassadors. So you can search Twitter at hashtag CEDIATweeps, and we're up there as well.
Don't you guys have a contest to see who gets the most peeps following them?
Yeah.
What is your handle or your CEDIA number?
Thank you.
Unless you're not doing that this year, in which case...
I am doing that this year. I had a momentary brain fade. I believe I am. If you go to cedia.com and you register, if you use code CT2, you will get free admission to the show floor. Always good.
All right, now I'm going to get in trouble from Matt Scott, who probably also has one. So.
As do I.
You do, Steve. Oh, well, then it's up to you. You can do.
No, that's fine. Everybody can register.
What are you, CT3?
No, 6.
There you go, CT6. So, Mr.
I may be advertising for somebody else. I'm not quite sure.
Probably
I think I'm CT2.
It doesn't matter. All of the marketing people stack this and win anyway. So
it's probably Siaka, who doesn't need any help. Mr. Greenblatt, thank you, sir, as always.
Thank you. It was great. Another great episode.
Yeah, and where can people find you or Control Concept?
ControlConcepts.net is the company website. At Steve Greenblatt is Twitter and many other, LinkedIn, Facebook, so forth. We started something for technology managers, community called Tech Talk, and that can be found at techtalkav.com. And hopefully everybody will tune in on Wednesday the 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern for our webinar.
Yep, I'm getting ready to show. For those of you watching on video, I'll put a link on the show on this episode's website or this episode's page. But there it is from Commercial Integrator, the debate, the great debate, as our buddy Tom Lelenk is calling it. Basically, it's Steve and I talking about and debating as much as we debate some of the different parts of integration, right? Whether or not touch panels are going bye-bye, and I'm somewhat in the camp with Uncle Richie where, you know what, a lot of stuff's going mobile, but there are still an awful lot of touch panels going in, especially with the price points they're heading now. But we'll get in those debates next week. So yeah,
we're also looking for topics too.
Yes. So if you on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever, email me, email Steve, email Tom, questions, right, that you want us to cover. So like I said, I'll post this on this episode's page, but if you haven't gotten there, just go to commercialintegrator.com and you can register for that webinar. So that's kind of cool. As far as us and me, don't follow me. I'm not very interesting, but everybody that makes AVNation happen is very interesting. Go by the website. The folks who do it do a very good job of it. Again, not me. Rich mentions his website. The very first episode or issue of AVNation's website was on a Squarespace site. I mentioned that because Rich's isn't still as well, and Matt Scott, who is I guess our graphic and pretty make things pretty guy. He's our webmaster. Quickly, once he got the reins of the website, said, "Yeah, you're not going to do that anymore." And because I make podcasts, I don't do pretty websites. So
you ought to hire a software developer.
Yes, I should. I got a graphics guy. He's good. But yeah, go by the website avnation.tv. Avnation.tv. This program, as well as a host of others. Brand new AV Week every week. That's our weekly wrap up of news and information. Last week, George Tucker gave me the week off, so he hosted, tackled a couple subjects like, I don't know, booth babes, because that was, holy cow, coming out of Infocom. Even David Labuscus weighed in on it. Actually, during the podcast, they posted that, and so they got to talk about that. Also, some actual, some technical stuff beyond the personnel of booths. But this program, Live, State of Control, which is this program, our social media and marketing program with Don Mead and Kelly Perkins called AV Social. So yeah, go by the website, avnation.tv. avnation.tv. Everything here is brought to you by Middle Atlantic Products, what Grace Systems are built on. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been A State of Control.